Can't control where the ember will land, only what happens when it does. Prepare, protect, prevail. Get fire adapted. Learn simple steps you could take now to reduce wildfire damage later at fireadapted.org. A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council. Learn more at fireadapted.org.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, we are seeing European stocks moving slightly higher. The Stoxx 600 currently up 0.4%. The FTSE gaining 0.2%. The DAX up 0.3% in Frankfurt. US futures pointing towards a more of a mixed open. The Nasdaq considerably lower at the moment when you look at those futures. This, as we do expect US President Trump to sign a bill against social media today. So a bit of something to watch for later hours. It follows a bit of a mixed trading day in Asian trading, where Hong Kong stocks have slipped amid those rising tensions between the US and China. Beijing in the past 10 minutes signing that controversial security legislation over Hong Kong. Now, those tensions have weakened the yuan even further today, despite a stronger fixing. We are seeing the offshore trading around 7.17. The South Korean won sliding about 0.4 after the central bank cut its interest rates. Otherwise, G10 currencies fairly range bound. The Bloomberg dollar spot index is flat. The yen at 107.8, sterling at 122. We're seeing the euro holding on to yesterday's gains, trading around 110 after that EU Commission fiscal plan was announced yesterday. 10-year Treasury yields are holding around 68 basis points. We're seeing 10-year bund yields are slightly higher at negative 41. Similarly so for 10-year gilt yields at 20 basis points. Gold is bid up 0.7% at $1,721 a troy ounce. We're seeing WTI slipping more than 3.5%, trading around $31 a barrel after U.S. industry data raised some concerns over excess supply. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Lynn Garrins with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. Here in the news in the UK, nurses from Black, Asian or minority ethnic backgrounds are apparently more likely to have problems accessing protective equipment. The Royal College of Nursing says the contrast in supply was stark and deeply worrying. The union says it's unacceptable that those from BAME communities are less protected. The Health Secretary insists progress is being made on making sure PPE gets to those who need it. In Germany, the Chancellor Angela Merkel is trying to rein in state leaders on loosening the lockdown. She's urging them to commit to social distancing rules and warning the coronavirus remains a risk, even as infection rates decline. Yesterday, the federal government and Germany's 16 states agreed to keep contact restrictions in place until the end of June. And SpaceX has postponed its historic NASA spaceflight until Saturday due to bad weather. The new timeline means Elon Musk's company will have to wait a few more days to launch 2 astronauts to the International Space Station. The voyage will be the first launch of American astronauts from the US since 2011. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Roger.
Leanne,
I'll pick it up
for that. Sorry, Mera.
I'll pick it up here, Leanne. Thank you. Now, we've just heard in the past few minutes that Chinese lawmakers approved a proposal for sweeping new national security legislation in Hong Kong, defying a threat by US President Donald Trump to respond strongly to a measure that democracy advocates say will curb essential freedoms in the city. Later, Premier Li Keqiang will give his annual post-MPC briefing. This is police in Hong Kong have arrested more than 360 people. For more, let's go live to Beijing, where Bloomberg's China correspondent Selena Wang is standing by. Selena, great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining. So just talk us through the significance of the latest news of the past 10 minutes and where we go from here.
That's right, Naya. We just got that news that China has approved this proposal for the new national security law, which of course comes as no surprise. This resolution will then be forwarded to the National People's Congress Standing Committee, which will actually draft the details. So it could still be another few months from now when we finally get the details of what these laws are going to look like that are going to ban subversion, secession, terrorism, and foreign interference. But likely this law could be passed by June or August. We've had a flurry of news in the past few days about possible U.S. retaliation. They could include financial sanctions, visa restrictions, export controls, and possibly even revoking Hong Kong's status as its special trading status with the U.S. This would be a huge deal, Naira. Under the U.S.-Hong Kong Policy Act of 1992, the U.S. agreed to treat Hong Kong autonomously when it comes to economic and trade matters. So that means that punitive tariffs and sanctions on China do not apply to Hong Kong. So the U.S. has a really delicate line to walk here about sending a strong message to Beijing while also not hurting Hong Kong people, businesses, and U.S. businesses operating in Hong Kong. Now, when it comes to China's response, they've reiterated that they could take countermeasures, that this is foreign meddling in an internal affair. And they've also tried to allay fears that this national security law would fundamentally change the freedoms and judicial independence of Hong Kong. But that really hasn't allayed the concerns of the business community in Hong Kong, which have issued quite strong statements saying that this is fundamentally the end of the one country, two systems rule.
And of course, certainly there are other things on the table as well, not least this legal decision in Canada regarding the CFO of Huawei and her potential extradition to the US. I mean, there's a lot of issues digging in here. So is this crisis simply going to escalate further?
Well, when it comes to this decision from the Vancouver judge, this is quite a big deal. It essentially passes a key